Hayes had never felt more out of place in his entire life. He stood alone at the edge of the radiant hall, dressed in a rental suit he had ironed twice because he didn't trust hotel steamers. Around him, towering alien nobility moved with flowing grace, scaled skin glimmering under the chandelier-like suns floating above the room. Music hummed from crystal instruments that played themselves. Everywhere he looked, colors shimmered in ways his human eyes could barely understand. And was a nerd from Earth who fixed starship software for a living. He shouldn't have been here, he knew it. Everyone else knew it. He had only come because his Lyra, a four-armed, cheerful engineer, insisted he attend her sister's diplomatic wedding. "You'll love it," she had said. "Free food, weird traditions, maybe you'll even talk to someone who isn't a." But now here he was, sweating through his collar, clutching a cup of glowing blue punch he was too afraid to taste. He wasn't nervous because of the aliens. He was nervous because of the vampires. They stood silently along the walls, tall and pale, their eyes faintly red, observers from the distant night colonies. Rumor said they didn't speak unless absolutely necessary. Rumor also said they chose their romantic partners with a single look, a look that meant forever. Avoided eye contact. Mostly. He tried to relax. He tried to focus on the ceremony beginning on the central dais. Two brides stood beneath a floating orb of shimmering water, hands entwined, while a priestess chanted in an alien language. Then, from the corner of his eye, something shifted. A presence. A gaze. Froze. One of the vampires, tall, with silver hair tied behind her head and eyes the color of dying embers, was staring directly at him. Not past him. Not toward the crowd. At him. Swallowed. "Nope, no, she probably thinks I'm someone else," he muttered to himself. Except she didn't look away. Her expression was unreadable, but her stillness was intentional, focused, as if she were listening to his heartbeat from across the room. Forced himself to look forward again. But every few seconds, curiosity him back. And every time he checked, she was still watching. Why? What did she want? He didn't dare approach her. She was probably some ancient, respected noble. He was a human whose greatest achievement was beating an 11-year-old at holochess. He didn't stand a chance. The ceremony continued until a long gong echoed, signaling the transition to the feast. Guests scattered to eat, dance, and socialize, stayed where he was, trying to disappear. "Miserable already?" Lyra chirped, walking up with a plate piled impossibly high. "Told you to relax." "I am relaxed," said stiffly. "You're vibrating." "I always vibrate." Lyra snorted. "You're at a peaceful royal union. Nothing dramatic ever happens at." The ground shook. Then a cold wind swept the hall. Every alien froze. Every vampire lifted their head. A single figure stepped forward. Headmistress, leader of the night colony's delegation. A legendary warrior feared for centuries, draped in shadowed armor that seemed to swallow light. Her gaze swept across the hall. It stopped. "On." Whispers erupted instantly. "Why him? Impossible. A human. What did he do?" Put his hands up. "I didn't even drink anything. I literally did nothing." Headmistress approached with slow, echoing footsteps. "Human," she said, voice deep and cold. "You have drawn the attention of Lady Saren." Blinked who? The silver-haired vampire stepped out from the wall, silent as frost. She bowed her head slightly. "Oh no, oh no." Continued, "When one of my warriors selects a bond candidate, tradition demands a test of worth." Stomach dropped. "Bond candidate me." Stared down at him like he was a mistake written on a sacred scroll. "By custom," she said, "I as headmistress must challenge the chosen to a duel." The hall gasped. His voice cracked. A duel with you." Nodded once, "To measure your courage, to see if Lady Saren's choice is foolish." Saren's eyes softened just a little, barely noticeable, but caught it. He didn't understand why she had chosen him. He didn't understand anything. Except one thing. Everyone in the hall now stared at him, waiting. Straightened shadows swirling behind her like wings. "Human Haze," she declared, "do you accept my challenge?" His pulse thundered. He wasn't a fighter. He wasn't brave. He wasn't chosen for anything. Yet Saren looked at him with something silent and fragile, something like hope, and realized he couldn't run. Not now. Not from this. He took a breath. "I accept." Gasps filled the air. His lips curled into a sharp, dangerous smile. "Then prepare yourself," she said. "At moonrise we fight." Felt his knees wobble. What had he just agreed to? And why did Saren look almost relieved? Hayes had never been more aware of how loudly a human heart could beat. The courtyard prepared for the duel felt nothing like the warm, colorful wedding hall. It was colder here, quieter. The air shimmered with tension instead of celebration. Lanterns of floating flame marked out a wide circle on the marble floor. Above, the moons have hung like pale ghosts, rising slowly into view. This was happening. He was about to duel the headmistress of the night colonies. Lyra stood beside him, whispering urgently while tightening his borrowed gauntlets. "Okay, breathe. No, slower. You look like you're about to explode." "I am about to explode," rasped. "I'm fighting a legendary vampire warrior with what? My strong sense of denial." "Confidence," she corrected. "I don't have that either." Lyra slapped his shoulder with two of her 4 hands. "You accepted the challenge. That means something. Even the vampires respect that." He looked across the courtyard, stood at the far end, motionless in her black armor, her cape shifting like it was alive. Beside her, silent as a shadow, was Saren, the silver-haired vampire who'd chosen him with a single stare and turned his life into chaos. Saren's red eyes flicked toward him. Something in his chest tightened. There was no mockery in her gaze, no pity, just quiet intensity, a strange gentleness behind the fearsome aura of her people. Why him? Why choose a nobody human she'd never spoken to? The question burned him from the inside. A bell chimed. The crowd murmured and took their places around the dueling circle. Alien nobles floated, perched, or stood, depending on anatomy, all watching with anticipation sharp enough to cut stone. Lyra gave him a firm nod. "You've got this." "I absolutely do not," said. But he stepped into the circle anyway. Entered from the opposite side, her boots echoing with each slow step. Her expression was carved from stone. "When the top moon touches the horizon," she declared, "we begin." Swallowed, his voice felt too small for this place. "Headmistress, before we start, may I ask something?" She raised a brow. "Why me?" asked softly. "Why did she choose me?" Saren stiffened, but didn't look away. Silence filled the courtyard like a held breath. Finally answered, "Lady Saren sees what others do not. She has never chosen lightly. If she selected you, it was not a mistake." That didn't answer anything. But it shook him. The moon lowered, the light shifted, moments remained. Removed her cloak. In her hands formed a long staff, forged of obsidian-like metal. Received his weapon, an energy-practice blade Lyra had insisted he use. He had trained with the hologram version once. And he lost to the training dummy. The bell rang. The duel began. Did not hesitate. She moved like a whisper of death, silent, fluid, terrifying. Barely dodged the first strike, stumbling backward. The crowd gasped. Scrambled to regain footing. He raised his blade awkwardly. Spun staff slashing downward. He blocked barely, and his arms shook from the impact. She didn't attack to kill, but she was testing him with precision, pressure, speed, strength. Every hit was a question. "Will you break? Will you run? Do you deserve to stand here?" Gritted his teeth. He was losing ground, fast. His mind raced. He remembered Lyra's advice, stay moving. Humans are unpredictable, use that. He ducked under staff, rolled to the side, and scrambled up again. The crowd murmured approvingly. Tilted her head, good. She lunged. Didn't think he reacted. He swung his blade in a desperate arc and clipped her armor. A clang echoed through the courtyard. Gasps. Stepped back, touched the scratch on her armor, and smiled faintly. Better. Saren's eyes widened, just a fraction, but to it looked like pride. His lungs burned, his arms shook, but he refused to back down. He wasn't strong. He wasn't trained. He wasn't anything special. But he was human. And humans never quit. Came at him again, harder, faster. The blows rained like thunder, staggered, blocked, dodged, barely keeping up. Until her staff hooked behind his ankle. He fell. The crowd fell silent. Pressed the end of her staff to his chest. Froze, panting, sweat dripping down his face. It is done, said. His heart sank. Failure. But then stepped back, withdrawing her staff. She lifted her voice for all to hear. He did not flee, he did not yield. He faced death with a mortal's courage. I declare the human haze worthy. The courtyard erupted. Blinked up at her, stunned. Worthy. Saren approached slowly. Her steps made no sound. When she reached him, she extended a pale hand to help him stand. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was soft and low, like moonlight made sound. Thank you for not running. Their hands touched. His heart forgot how to beat. Still couldn't believe he had survived. Not just survived, but passed some impossible test in front of the most feared vampire warrior alive. Every muscle ached. Every nerve screamed. But none of it compared to the whirlwind of confusion spinning inside him. He stood in the quiet aftermath of the duel, the courtyard now filled with whispers. Alien nobles floated closer, their expressions a mix of astonishment and respect. Humans weren't meant to be here. Humans weren't meant to be worthy of a vampire's attention. And yet, here he was. Saren stayed by his side, her pale hand still brushing his shoulder lightly. Come, she said softly. We need to talk somewhere private. Nodded, still dazed. He didn't know why, but he felt compelled to follow. They moved away from the crowd, down a narrow, shadowed corridor lined with silvery, glowing vines that pulsed like living veins. Saren's presence was magnetic and unnerving at the same time. Felt like every heartbeat he had ever ignored was screaming in his chest. Finally, they reached a balcony overlooking the alien city. Moons hung low, reflecting off crystal towers and rivers of liquid light. The scene was beautiful, terrifying, and almost overwhelming. Saren leaned against the railing, her red eyes catching the moonlight. You are still alive, she said quietly. I didn't think I would be, admitted. I'm not a fighter, I don't belong here. Her gaze softened slightly, but her voice remained firm. You surprised everyone, especially me. I do not choose lightly. Stomach twisted. Why me? You could pick anyone. Why a human? Why me? Saren was silent for a long moment. Then she said, almost in a whisper, because you are different. Humans have a way of seeing things others overlook. You have courage without arrogance. You feel deeply, yet you act. Most of my people, we choose what is practical. You are unpredictable. Blinked, unpredictable, that's your reason. She tilted her head. It is enough for now. The words sent shivers down his spine. Humans were small, fragile, ordinary. Yet here was a centuries-old vampire telling him he was extraordinary in ways she couldn't even define. Wanted to speak, but he didn't know what to say. He could feel his voice faltering. And then, something even stranger happened. Saren stepped closer, her fingers brushing his hand lightly again, almost accidentally, but with the weight of intent behind it. His mind screamed, this is impossible, I'm just a nerd. This is a mistake, she'll regret it. But Saren's eyes didn't waver. They held his, steady, piercing, and patient, waiting for him to understand something he couldn't yet put into words. Before he could respond, a booming voice echoed through the balcony. Haze. The sound made his stomach flip. He turned to see Headmistress striding toward them, her armor gleaming in the moonlight. "You have survived my test," she said, voice carrying over the distance. "But survival alone is not enough. Lady Saren's choice brings responsibilities. You will answer to me, immediately." Swallowed responsibilities. His gaze was sharp, unyielding. "You now bear a bond, a potential alliance that could shape centuries. Your presence here is no longer casual. You will train, you will learn. And yes, you will fight again, human, perhaps not today, but soon." Legs threatened to buckle. I can't." Cut him off. "You can, you must. You have been chosen. There is no alternative." Saren's hand squeezed his slightly, grounding him. "Do not fear," she whispered. "I will not allow them to destroy you, but you must be ready, and I will help you if you let me." Looked at her, the weight of the words sinking in. He wasn't just at a wedding anymore. He wasn't just a nerd trying not to embarrass himself. He was part of something bigger, something alien, dangerous, and thrilling. And for reasons he didn't yet understand, he wanted to rise to it. "I'll try," he said finally, voice trembling but determined. Saren's lips curved into the faintest smile. "Good, that is all I ask." Watched silently for a moment, then turned sharply. "Your first lesson begins tomorrow. You will report to the Hall of Shadows at first light. I will observe you closely." With that, she departed, her presence leaving a cold, hollow echo behind. Turned back to Saren, Hall of Shadows, first light. She laughed softly, a sound that was almost musical. "You are going to learn that human timekeeping is a primitive concept. Don't worry, I will guide you." Exhaled shakily, gripping her hand for a fraction longer than necessary. His heart pounded in a way that wasn't just fear, it was anticipation. Somewhere deep in his chest, a small ember of hope had ignited. Maybe, just maybe, he could survive this world. And maybe, just maybe, he could survive Saren too. The Hall of Shadows was nothing like had imagined. It wasn't a dojo, it wasn't a classroom. It was alive. The walls seemed to breathe, made of black stone veined with silver light. Shadows moved independently, flickering like living creatures. The floor rippled under his feet, as if testing his balance. Candles of blue fire floated overhead, giving off no heat but filling the air with a faint metallic scent. Swallowed, "This is a lot." Saren, as silent as ever, simply nodded and led the way. She glided across the hall effortlessly, while he stumbled over shadows, tripped on invisible ridges, and cursed under his breath. "Focus," she said softly. "Your fear is natural, but it will betray you if you let it." Wiped sweat from his forehead. "I'm not sure I have focus. I have panic, adrenaline, and very poor coordination." Saren tilted her head, her red eyes studying him. "Then we start there. You must first trust yourself. Humans are fragile, but fragile does not mean weak. Learn to use what you have." Blinked, "I have what I have." Saren's gaze softened slightly. "Courage, curiosity, ingenuity, the qualities of a human who survives where stronger beings fail. That is why I chose you." Wanted to argue, but a new challenge appeared before him. A shadow detached from the wall, a humanoid form made entirely of darkness, yet its eyes glimmered with sharp intelligence. His voice echoed through the hall. "Your first test begins. Defeat the shadows or fail. You have no allies but your mind and body." Stomach dropped. He raised his training blade, feeling its hum of energy through his hands. He had fought once and barely survived. How was he supposed to handle this? The shadow lunged, stumbled backward. Every instinct told him to run. But he remembered Saren's touch during the duel, her steadying presence. He took a deep breath. "Okay," he muttered. "Focus, curiosity, ingenuity." He noticed a pattern. The shadow didn't move randomly. It mirrored his movements, probing for mistakes. He ducked under one strike and leapt aside, letting his intuition guide him rather than brute force. Each strike of his blade disrupted the shadow for a fraction of a second, enough to keep him alive. And slowly, he began to adapt. His movements became sharper, more confident. His mind raced ahead, anticipating, calculating, improvising. Saren watched silently, but when he finally blocked a particularly fast strike, she inclined her head. "Good." couldn't help but glance at her. She was beautiful in a terrifying way, every movement deliberate, every expression composed, yet there was warmth in her eyes now just for him. He felt a strange surge of determination. For the first time, he wasn't just fighting to survive. He was fighting for her, for the trust she had placed in him, for the inexplicable bond that had begun in that courtyard. The shadows receded, stumbled, exhausted but triumphant. He fell to his knees, breathing heavily, heart hammering. "You survived," Saren said softly, "and learned faster than I expected." Wiped his sweat-drenched hair from his face. Survived, barely, learned maybe a little. Saren's lips curved, the faintest trace of a smile. She stepped closer, placing a hand lightly on his shoulder. "You will grow, and soon you will face challenges far greater than shadows. There are those who do not wish for our bond to exist." Stomach tightened. "Threats already." "Yes," Saren said, her eyes hardening. "The night colonies are divided. Some view humans as weak, others see you as a weapon. Either way, your presence will stir conflict." His head spun. "So, training, survival, and political intrigue, all before I even understand half of this world." Saren tilted her head. "Yes, but you are human, and humans survive." He stared at her, the weight of her words settling in. Somehow, in the middle of fear, exhaustion, and impossibility, he felt hope. Not just that he could survive, but that he wanted to, that he needed to. And when Saren's hand lingered on his, brushing his fingers, the ember of something deeper flickered again in his chest. Something neither of them could yet name. His voice echoed through the hall, breaking the moment. "Human, rest. Tomorrow we continue. The true test has yet to begin." Nodded, trying to steady his shaking hands. He wasn't ready, not fully. But for the first time, he felt like he might be capable of more than he ever imagined. And when he looked at Saren, standing silently by his side, he knew one thing. He wasn't facing this alone. Awoke to the faint hum of the Hall of Shadows. The blue flames flickered, casting long, wavering shadows that seemed alive. He rubbed his eyes. The night had been restless, dreams of flying moons, whispering walls, and Saren's steady gaze haunting him. "Up already?" Saren's voice was soft but firm, and she appeared silently at the entrance. Her red eyes glimmered faintly in the low light. "You must continue your training. There is no time to linger on rest." Sat up slowly, still aching from yesterday's session. I feel like I got hit by a starship. Do I really have to train today?" She stepped closer. "Yes, you have much to learn, and your survival depends on it." He groaned but followed her into the center of the hall. The shadows moved again, forming shapes more intricate than before, creatures with wings, claws, and eyes that glowed with malice. His words rang in his head. The true test has yet to begin. Raised his practice blade, heart hammering. Saren stayed nearby, her presence quiet and grounding. Then it happened. The shadows shifted unnaturally, condensing into a humanoid figure, one that resembled the headmistress herself but darker, froze. A voice hissed in his mind, cold and deliberate. "You do not belong here, human. Leave or die." Swallowed hard, his first instinct was to run. Every fiber of him screamed that this was beyond him. But then he felt Saren's hand brush against his arm, grounding him. "You can," she whispered. "I know you can." He gritted his teeth. Humans survived through ingenuity, not brute strength. He remembered the lessons from yesterday: observe, anticipate, adapt. The shadow lunged, rolled, barely dodging a strike that would have sliced him in half. His energy blade hummed and he swung blindly. The strike connected, not perfectly, but enough to stagger the shadow. It hissed, a sound that curdled his blood. Then, without warning, it spoke in a voice eerily familiar. "Your bond with her makes you weak, yet dangerous." His mind raced. Bond, Saren's bond. Saren's hand gripped his shoulder. "Do not falter, trust yourself and me." He took a deep breath. In that instant, he realized something. He didn't fight alone. Saren's presence was more than guidance, it was strength, a silent current he could ride. He attacked again, moving faster than before, letting instinct guide him. The shadow faltered, its strikes losing precision. and then with a desperate final lunge pressed his blade against the shadow's chest. It dissolved into black mist, evaporating with a hiss that echoed like a scream. He stumbled backward, panting. Saren's eyes softened as she stepped forward. "Well done." His chest heaved. I did it, really." "Yes," she said, her voice gentle. "You faced a reflection of fear. Most humans would have fled. You stood. That is why you are chosen." He wanted to speak, but words failed him. Instead, he just stared at her, and in that moment their hands met again, this time more intentionally. The warmth of her touch, the quiet power in her gaze, sent a thrill through him he couldn't name. Before he could process it, a messenger arrived, an alien envoy from a rival colony bearing urgent news. "There has been an incident," the envoy said, eyes wide. "A faction opposes the union of Saren and the human. They have sent assassins." "Froze, assassins now." Saren's expression hardened. "It begins sooner than expected." She turned to him, her hand still resting lightly on his arm. "You must be ready, not just for shadows, but for real enemies. Your life and mine depend on it." Swallowed, his heart pounded, not from fear alone, but from the realization that his life had changed forever. He wasn't just a human nerd at an alien wedding anymore. He was a chosen bond, a partner in a dangerous game he barely understood. And he had no choice but to rise to it. As they prepared to leave the Hall of Shadows, glanced at Saren. The night sky above the city reflected in her red eyes, and for the first time he understood. Whatever happened next, he wasn't facing it alone. And somewhere deep inside, a flicker of courage, hope, and something more, something he dared not name, burned brighter than ever. His heart pounded like a drum in his chest as he followed Saren through the twisting streets of the alien city. Every shadow seemed alive, every whisper a potential threat. The envoy's warning had been clear. The faction opposing Saren and him would strike tonight. He wasn't a fighter, not really. Not like Saren, not like. But the weight of her trust pressed on him, steady and terrifying all at once. Saren's hand brushed his as they turned a corner. "Stay close," she said softly. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were sharp, scanning every alley, every flicker of light. "Swallowed, close enough to trip over you," he muttered. She ignored the comment but let her hand linger on his arm. That small contact anchored him. He drew strength from it, a courage he didn't know he had. Suddenly, a shadow moved faster than any normal being should. Barely had time to react before a sleek, armored figure lunged at him from the rooftops. An assassin. Froze, panic threatened to swallow him whole. But Saren was already moving, blades flashing, grace and speed beyond comprehension. She intercepted the first strike with fluid precision, deflecting it with a flick of her wrist. She called, voice steady but urgent, "Now." His mind raced, "Now, but I'm not ready, I'm." But then he remembered the shadow training. Observation, anticipation, adaptation. He raised his energy blade, shaky but determined. The assassin lunged again and instinctively swinging the blade. He connected, not a perfect strike, but enough to force the attacker back. Saren's eyes widened slightly, a rare hint of surprise. She blocked and countered with a spin that sent the assassin sprawling to the ground. "You're improving," she said quietly, her gaze lingering on him. "Faster than I expected." Swallowed, adrenaline surging. I just followed my instincts." The assassin rose again, this time moving with deadly precision, aiming for Saren. His breath caught, and for a moment, fear almost froze him. Then he realized this wasn't just about surviving. This was about protecting her. He leapt forward, throwing his body between Saren and the attacker. His blade caught the assassin's arm, deflecting a strike that could have been fatal. Pain lanced through him, but he didn't let go. Saren's eyes softened, and in that split second understood something profound. She trusted him. She believed he could rise to the challenge. With a coordinated strike, Saren and fought together. He followed her movements, anticipating, reacting, and adapting. Every step, every block, every swing brought him closer to a rhythm he never thought possible. Finally, the assassin fell, defeated but alive, melting into the shadows with a hiss. Dropped to his knees, panting. His arms shook violently, his chest burned, but he was alive. And for the first time, he didn't feel like a helpless human. Saren knelt beside him, placing her hand gently on his shoulder. "You did well," she said softly. "More than well, you protected me." Looked into her eyes, the glow of the moons reflecting in their depths. I didn't think I could, but I couldn't let anything happen to you." For a moment, the world fell away. The danger, the shadows, the politics. It was just them standing together in the moonlight, hands brushing, hearts racing. Saren's voice was barely above a whisper. "You've grown, human. I chose you for a reason." His chest tightened. "I don't understand why you chose me, but I think I'm beginning to." Her fingers lingered against his, and the ember of something deeper, trust, connection, perhaps even love, flared between them. Felt it like electricity, a warmth spreading through every nerve. But the moment was broken by a whisper in the wind. Danger still lingered. The faction opposed to their bond was out there, and this was only the beginning. Saren stood, eyes sharp, alert. "We move," she said. "They will not stop, and neither will we." Rose beside her, blade in hand, heart still racing, but his fear tempered by something new. Courage. Not the reckless courage of ignorance, but the steady courage of someone who had chosen to stand, to fight, to survive, and to protect someone he cared for. The moonlight shimmered on her silver hair, and for a fleeting moment he swore the entire city was watching them, witnessing the bond forming between human and vampire, impossible and dangerous, yet undeniable. Realized then that life would never be ordinary again, but for the first time he welcomed it. Because whatever came next, he would face it with her. The moons hung low, casting a silver glow over the alien city. The streets were quiet, too quiet. Heart thumped as he followed Saren through the shadows, senses stretched tight. Tonight, the faction opposing their bond would make their final move. Had trained, survived shadows, and even faced a real assassin. But now, this was different. This was personal. This was a war he had no right to be in, and yet he was here. Saren's fingers brushed his hand, a touch that steadied him more than any weapon ever could. "Remember," she whispered, "courage is not the absence of fear, it is action in spite of it." Nodded, gripping his energy blade. Fear didn't vanish, but it became fuel, sharpening his focus. From the rooftops, figures dropped into the street, a dozen assassins armored in dark, reflective suits. Their eyes glowed faintly red. Its finest, or the deadliest of its rogue factions, had come for them. Froze for a moment, then Saren's eyes met his, steady and unyielding, and he realized he was not alone. He could fight. He had to fight. The first assassin lunged at him. Instinct took over. He dodged, pivoted, and struck with his blade. It connected, sending the attacker sprawling. Another charged. He blocked, rolled, countered, each movement faster. His mind was clear, his body reacting like never before. Saren moved beside him, silent and deadly, blades flashing. Together they were a storm of speed and precision. Began to anticipate her movements, complementing her strikes with instinctual decisions he didn't know he had. One assassin lunged directly at Saren. Intercepted, pushing the attacker back, sacrificing himself without hesitation. Saren's eyes softened for a fleeting second. "Human," she whispered, but there was no time for more. The fight escalated, a blur of light, shadow, and sound. But through it all felt a strange clarity. He wasn't just a human nerd. He was someone who could stand against the impossible. He was a partner, a bond. Finally, the last assassin fell, collapsing into the street, defeated. Silence returned, heavy and profound. His chest heaved, sweat and blood mingling on his skin. Saren approached, her expression unreadable at first. Then she lifted a hand and brushed her fingers across his cheek softly, almost reverently. "You did it," she said, her voice low, intimate. "You survived everything, not because you are strong, but because you dare." Swallowed, shaking. I didn't do it alone." Her red eyes softened. "No, you never are alone anymore." The wind shifted, carrying the faint scent of alien flowers from the wedding gardens. And in that moment realized what he had truly earned. Not just survival, not just recognition from fiercest warriors, but Saren's trust, her choice, and something more profound than he could name. Saren, he began, voice trembling. I don't know if I deserve this, any of this, but I want it. I want to fight by your side. I want us to be together. For the first time, Saren smiled fully, a rare and radiant expression that made his heart skip. Then do it. Stay by my side, be human, be brave, be you. He took a deep breath and reached for her hand. Their fingers intertwined. The bond was no longer silent, no longer uncertain. It was real, alive, and unbreakable. Appeared then, stepping from the shadows. Human Haze, she said, her voice as sharp as ever. You have surpassed my expectations. You have proven what humans can accomplish when courage guides them. You are worthy. Straightened pride swelling in his chest. He had never felt so alive. Thank you, he said simply. Inclined her head. This is only the beginning, but tonight you have shown the universe that even the smallest beings can face the greatest dangers. Never forget it. The city stretched beneath them, glittering with alien light, and for the first time didn't feel out of place. He was no longer just a human at an alien wedding. He was a hero, a partner, a survivor. And he was standing with Saren, silent, deadly, and beautiful, his bond, his equal, and perhaps his destiny. His pulse raced, not with fear, but with exhilaration. The impossible had been conquered, and together they could face whatever the universe dared to throw at them next. As they looked up at the rising moons, whispered almost to himself, "We did it together." Saren's lips curved into the faintest smile, her hand tightening over his. Yes, together. And in the quiet glow of city, under alien moons and shimmering stars, the human who dared had become more than a spectator. He had become legend.